When we survey people who actually have these problems, who meet these diagnostic criteria, and we say, why have you not sought treatment for that? Here are their responses. Number one, my problem isn't that bad, right? And your first instinct is to sort of blame them for that, right? Well, it's not the treatment center's fault, it's the client's denial. Let's talk about methamphetamine a minute, can we? Tell me about the images of methamphetamine addiction in the popular media in terms of what they look like. They look like somebody that just walked out of a concentration camp at the end of World War II. Agreed? We see this stick-like, emaciated figure. As we demonize drugs as part of anti-drug campaigns, we create caricatures of what drug addiction looks like. How many people do you think are dependent upon methamphetamine today who are still living in intact families, who are still employed, full or part-time, or in many cases working multiple jobs to make what they used to make in one job, right? And if they're asking the question, am I in trouble in my relationship with this drug, they see methamphetamines in some cases as sort of steroids, right? You know, the only way I'm going to be able to work double shifts and support my family, because I don't make $30 anymore, I make $8 an hour. And I'm working double shifts to support my 4 kids. This is not about getting high. This is about maintaining my ability to simply keep up doing what I got to do to take care of my family. And then we flash this emaciated figure on the screen to them. And they say what? My problem? My problem isn't that bad. How do the stereotypes that we portray popularly about people addicted to alcohol and drugs contribute to this in this culture? Here's the flip side of this. Are we doing anything to systematically alter that perception? Not in the general, I'm not talking about the general population. I'm not talking about some general education campaign so the public understands addiction. I'm talking about, are we changing the perception of what alcohol and drug dependent people look like in the eyes of people who are alcohol and drug dependent today and are in need of treatment? Is there any system-wide strategy that we have to do that? We do in this, yes, the closest we come is in Faces and Voices of Recovery. When people stand up and tell recovery stories, and and we see them bright-eyed and articulate, and they're describing their level of function and how they mask some of the worst problems they had, and all of a sudden now we're getting closer and closer to that story matching up with the stories of people who in fact need help today. So those are beginning to bring some people out of the woodwork. Let's look at the second one, perception of self. Even if I said, you know, my problem's that bad, but I overestimate my capacity to manage this on my own. Right? This is something I can handle. I'm taking care of it. I've made some decisions about it. I've set some limits. I'm doing okay. Are we doing anything to help people test their capacity and speed up the recognition that they either in fact can handle this problem or know they can handle this problem and they are going to need some outside help?
We often do that
in our screening. Tell me how we do that in our screen. That's perception of self. I should be able to handle this on my own. This is a problem I can handle. One of my mentors is Ernie Kurtz. Ernie Kurtz is probably best known for one of 2 books, either the book Not God, A History of Alcoholics Anonymous. He's sort of the definitive AA historian. And he also wrote a book called The Spirituality of Imperfection. Ernie's well known in terms of his connection with the history of 12-step fellowships. What many people don't know was Ernie played an interesting role in the earliest days of the founding of moderation management in the United States. And he did that for an interesting reason. Ernie believes, and continues to believe to this day, that if we had effective moderation societies in the United States and moderation-based programs that would teach people the public health standards for moderate drinking and what those are, that it would dramatically speed up the number of people who attempted those and quickly realized what? Because, for example, the beginning of moderation management requires a 30-day period of abstinence. What percentage of people will never pull off that 30 days? So that might be your first clue that moderation management might not be the best choice. And then they have these sophisticated formulas around the number of days to drink, a drink count limit, and there are people, by the way, who will do that and actually manage and maintain those limits and do quite well with that kind of a program. But this person who overestimates their ability would quickly find out what under those circumstances. I had the opportunity of interviewing members of moderation management in New York City a few years back. And one of the things that surprised me was they said, you also need to interview AA members who started out in MM. And I said, oh, that's kind of intriguing. I would love to. So the people I interviewed were people who started out in MM, convinced they were going to use MM, and they were not going to go to any fellowship that made them stop drinking completely. Quickly found out, with every effort they put in to make this moderation thing work, it simply flat out wouldn't work. When I interviewed them, what do you think they told me about if it wasn't for MM, how long they thought they would have continued to drink before they actually sought some kind of help for that problem? So, interesting. Perception of self. Are we doing anything to help systematically test limits? I think we should be in every mall in the United States. I think we should be at every health fair. I think we should actually be coaching what responsible alcohol use looks like in the United States and what irresponsible, meaning people that got problems and loss of control, look like. So people can very early figure out that yes, they may have a problem and their management skills are not particularly working. Perception of treatment. If we go into drug cultures in particular, and we say, why aren't people, for example, addicted to heroin? Why are they not seeking treatment? What do you think we hear? The question is, what is our reputation, the reputation of treatment providers in the eyes? And they got 1,000 stories to tell you. Because they know all the people that went to treatment and came back to them the day they got out to cop dope. Guess who they don't know? The people who left treatment and didn't come to them. So that's the recovery world is not visible to them. So if you think about the drug culture we talked about this morning, in that drug culture, treatment is an acknowledgement of what? You're a loser. You're not only a loser in terms of becoming addicted, you couldn't even be a good junkie, for God's sakes. So we almost have a stigma attached to treatment-seeking behavior. So the question is, how do we move into street cultures, if you will, in terms of illicit drug use in the United States, and really begin to alter the perception of treatment in the eyes? How do we take people who are in recovery, that usually disappear from those cultures, and go back and make contact with those cultures and put a face and voice on recovery? What do you think happens when we bring recovering people, come together as groups of volunteers, and go back in aggressive outreach programs to work the same streets they used to cop and shoot dope on for 25 years? And see the same people now. Now you want to talk about a powerful change in the perception of treatment and the change of recovery. And that's what we're seeing. One of the things we're seeing in recovery management models are these extremely assertive outreach programs that I'm going to describe to you shortly.